Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and this is Movie Crap. This is my movie news show where I talk about movie news that has happened in the past week and movie issues I want to talk about, as well as later then articles or videos that are of interest for you to watch, and then finally trailers for you to check out. All the links for most of these stories will be in the description down below. Check that out if you'd like to find out any more information about these stories. The first big news, I guess, Matt Reeves has been asked by Warner Brothers, or at least an offer has been made for him to direct the Batman movie, the Ben Affleck Batman movie. He has not said yes. A deal has not been finalized. We don't know how long it'll take for that deal to be finalized, but an offer has gone through. And that's what we learned at the end of last week. And then it came out in a rumor, strictly a rumor, that Ben Affleck does not want to be Batman anymore, and he wants to get rid of the project and being Batman. A lot of people are saying that he might not star in this Batman movie, which is totally terrible timing for Warner Brothers, since they just made an offer to a director and the guy who was supposed to be Batman has now presumably flown the coop or something. Or that this could be his last role as Batman, because that would be kind of crappy to have been Batman but not in a solo Batman movie. I mean, even Will Arnett got his own solo Batman movie. It'd be kind of a sad way to go out. We'll see if he actually gets out of the role for this movie. I think this is more of a 2020 thing, and we might not see him in as many DC extended universe whatever movies. And there's rumors that he could die in this Batman movie. There's rumors that someone else could play and they could keep his script. There's rumors that they'll completely redo everything and reboot the DCEU, which is like a whole other thing. I don't know what's gonna happen. This is just a rumor, but I'm sure everyone at Warner Brothers is like, dude, we just solved this problem. What are you doing to us? It seems like his relationship with Warner Brothers soured so quickly. It's kind of ridiculous. Just over Live by Night, a movie that no one will remember in a couple years and didn't get nominated for anything, and now it's going to pretty much change the course of his career, and he's not going to play Batman because of some weird auteurist artistic statement that didn't really work out.
So sorry for the change of location. I found out about this news after I shot the rest of the video. Mel Gibson is actually being courted by Warner Brothers to direct Suicide Squad 2, which is interesting. I don't think anyone expected that. Warner Brothers has been pretty loyal to him over the years. They actually tried to get him in The Hangover Part 2 until the cast objected and boycotted the idea. I think the bigger question isn't why is Warner Brothers doing this, because, you know, he's an Oscar-nominated director now. I guess I get it. I didn't like Hacksaw Ridge as much as most people, but I get it on a sort of level, I guess. But Mel Gibson hasn't really done a studio assignment maybe ever, and he usually self-funds all his movies like Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto, and I'm fairly certain Hacksaw Ridge. So this would be an interesting avenue for him to go in. He might shoot and direct like a studio director, certainly in terms of Hacksaw Ridge, but he isn't. Okay, so we know Warner Brothers wants him, but I kind of think, does Mel Gibson want to do a movie with Warner Brothers? And I think that's the bigger question right now. Given his history, he has more of a reason not to do it than maybe they do, because clearly they want a bigger director to do Suicide Squad 2. I don't know if this is going to help the box office. Suicide Squad was, despite the negative reaction, a big hit, one of the highest grossing movies of the year. This is a big property for them, and even though David Ayers is moving on to Gotham Sirens, they need someone substantial to do it. I don't know if Mel Gibson's really the best choice, but he is an interesting choice, and that's something they haven't actually done in a while. Does Mel Gibson need to do this? And financially, he doesn't, and he's already proven himself to a certain degree. He might just want to go on and work on a project he wants to work on, or he could make a deal and get to work on his dream project and have them finance that right after he does Suicide Squad. So we'll see what happens, but this is an interesting development. I'm curious why they offered him Suicide Squad 2 and what they're planning for Suicide Squad 2 and what he would want to do with Suicide Squad 2. I think that's probably one of the more interesting things. Like, what would Mel Gibson's Suicide Squad 2 even look like? And will Will Smith do it and other big stars who were in the first one, or will he just have a whole new group of villains? That could be the possibility as well, and especially with how heavily criticized Suicide Squad was. Will this premise even work again with the sequel? Maybe they're just like, well, we'll just cut our losses and have Mel Gibson direct it, and if it's a bomb, it's not our fault because we were crazy or something. Really, it's will Mel Gibson do it at this point? It's not Warner Brothers getting cold feet, and I honestly don't think he would, but I'm a little curious about the movie if he did. Now let's go back to the previous location.
The Halloween reboot from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, which seriously came out of nowhere. Everyone was like, holy shit, where did this come from? It was announced by John Carpenter, who is an executive producer on this. So the thing with executive producers is most of the time it's like a guy who sits in a room and just kind of like makes a few decisions. Some people get vanity credits as executive producers. James Gandolfini got an executive producer credit on The Night Of, and he's dead. So that shows you executive producer doesn't necessarily mean a lot of involvement. In this project, it feels like he has more involvement. It's such a better way to go because I wouldn't really want to see another horror director do a Halloween movie, but a movie from David Gordon Green and co-written by David Gordon Green and Danny McBride I think sounds really cool. Jason Blum is also producing it, and I think it's being made through Blumhouse. Carpenter, who was involved in the first 3 Halloween movies, the 2 he truly produced, I guess, were 2 which he helped co-write and 3 which he was only really on as a producer. Shows kind of an idea to do kind of weirder stuff with the franchise, and Halloween as a franchise, honestly, past 3 isn't interesting at all. And so this is kind of the coolest news I've heard for a Halloween sequel in probably forever. Much better than that Rob Zombie stuff, and apparently it's going to take place as more of a sequel restarting after 2. Clearly 3's like its own thing or whatever. This is going to take place after 2, kind of doing a revisionist rewrite, much like Superman Returns or something. So Halloween 4 and all that stuff won't count, which thank God, because who cares about that crap. I'm very excited for this because it just sounds like even if it isn't good, it's a weird experiment, and that's something you can at least respect about Halloween 3, and having a new Halloween movie is something that I don't think anyone could respect, so I think it's really awesome that we're actually going to get kind of weirder Halloween sequel in 2017. Stranger Things is going to have 2 episodes directed by Andrew Stanton, who directed Finding Dory, Finding Nemo, and Wall-E, and also John Carter. This is a big deal because he hasn't done any live action directing, to my knowledge, unless he did a commercial or something, since John Carter, and it's kind of surprising. It seemed like he was not going to go back to this, but it's kind of cool that he's doing 2 Stranger Things episodes, apparently later in the season. I'm curious about those. I'm excited for season 2 of Stranger Things, but it's interesting Andrew Stanton coming back to do live action stuff and doing TV, in fact, although I guess it's Netflix, so is it really TV? But, you know, the idea of TV or whatever. And it seems like kind of an interesting avenue to go into, especially a director who I don't think could get a live action film made after John Carter. So this might be a better way so he can like learn the ropes more, but I think that's actually kind of cool and an interesting road for Andrew Stanton to go in, especially after he had the 2nd highest grossing film of the year until Rogue One, and it was the highest grossing film of the whole summer, and to have him now be doing Stranger Things episodes, I think we have an interesting career path ahead from somebody who we seemingly sort of forgot about as a director. A director was chosen for Disney's live action remake of their animated film Mulan, and that director is the director of Whale Rider, Nikki Caro. I like Whale Rider a lot, so I think that's actually a pretty cool decision. Disney is touting that they currently have 2 over $100 million productions directed by women currently in production or pre-production, or at least they're going to happen. A Wrinkle in Time by Ava DuVernay and Nikki Caro doing Mulan. There's a Sony's Mulan that's going on as well. Ang Lee had previously been pitched, I believe he was pitched this Mulan, not Sony's Mulan. I think he was pitched Disney's Mulan and he wasn't interested. They wanted to get an Asian director. Both studios wanted an Asian director to do one of their Mulans. It seems like Disney has not gone that way. He's an interesting director and it kind of makes me a little interested in this movie. Although I generally do not like the Disney live action remakes, this is kind of more of how Marvel picks directors, for somebody who has like an interesting idea in their filmography that would work for that kind of an idea. And clearly, since Marvel's at Disney, they use that kind of a theory for picking a director, and I think that is a good move. The American remake of The Raid is back on with Joe Carnahan and Frank Grillo in it. Before, there were versions of it with Frank Grillo and Taylor Kitsch, and none of that came to fruition. It looked like the American remake of The Raid, or the Hollywood remake of The Raid, wasn't going to happen, but it seems to have been restarted with Frank Grillo and Joe Carnahan. Joe Carnahan is, of course, first doing Bad Boys 3 or Bad Boys for Life, and then I guess he'll do the Raid remake. I really like Frank Grillo, so I'm sort of into this idea as kind of a forgettable, little dumb American remake of a much better movie. I mean, The Raid's like one of the most awesome action movies of the decade. I don't think they'll match that at all, but for a fun concept, like kind of action movie with Frank Grillo, I'm kind of down for that. So, you know, if they can at least get it to work on that level, I'll be fine. Infinity War released a first look production featurette. It has, you know, a cool thing with Robert Downey Jr., Tom Holland, and Chris Pratt all standing next to each other and everything about how they're starting work on Infinity War, which is going to take like a whole year to make. If you'd like to see what's going on with Infinity War, it's kind of like the first look we're going to get from that. But it's an interesting first look and kind of clues you in on, you know, little tidbits, and you can sort of see the sets behind there. It's a fun video, especially if you're as excited as I am for Infinity War. Now I'm going to talk about the box office, and I get to talk about the Valentine's Day box office because that came out in time for me to talk about it. So obviously Lego Batman was the #1 movie at the box office, making about $53 million. Most people thought it'd make 60 and above because of what Lego Movie did. It made below what Warner Brothers was expecting, which was kind of surprising, but it still did really, really well. 50 Shades Darker made about 46, and John Wick made about 30. And it seemed to be that consistently. 50 Shades Darker was #1 that Friday, but Lego Batman was #1 Saturday and Sunday, which is to be expected as kids can go to more matinees on Saturday and Sunday, whereas Friday night's more an adult audience, so that kind of makes sense. 50 Shades Darker will make even less next weekend, which is a huge fall off, much like what happened with the first film. Now this film made about $40 million less than the first film, as buzz has died down quite a bit for the 50 Shades franchise and books and all that stuff. But there's some interesting box office kind of things with this. Now first, Lego Movie, it looks like on the weekend made more than 50 Shades Darker, and that's what most people are saying. But #1 on Monday was 50 Shades Darker, and Tuesday was 50 Shades Darker, and at this point, as of Tuesday's box office, 50 Shades Darker has made about $1 million more than the Lego Batman movie. It's not even really $1 million more. It's like a couple, like 800,000 maybe. That's kind of surprising that 50 Shades Darker was able to sort of one-up Lego Batman. Everyone knew it was going to be #1 on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is a huge movie-going holiday, and so that's not too surprising. John Wick Chapter 2 consistently is just holding at #3. Lego Batman's at 60 million. John Wick Chapter 2 is at 37 million. One of the producers of Dredd recently said that if a Dredd sequel is going to happen, or a Dredd 2, it would most likely be animated because no one will mount the amount of money for a second Dredd movie, which is like, yeah, no duh, dude. An animated follow-up to Dredd would actually be kind of cool, so I hope that works out. I would be down for that. They put that on VOD or something, and I think cost-wise it would sort of work out. A Cure for Wellness came into the news because it actually used fake news to publicize the movie. They intentionally used fake news to make fake news articles to kind of publicize based on like the healing water thing. It's creative. I know it's like maybe not the most morally right thing to do to spend ad dollars on a fake news site, but I think it's at least creative. Some people aren't as thrilled with it as others. It's kind of a cool way to promote something, although it is kind of giving people fake news and leading them down evil paths and such, but it also, you know, you got to promote your movie somehow. So related to A Cure for Wellness is the BioShock movie. If you remember, that was going to happen with Gore Verbinski, who directed A Cure for Wellness, as well as The Ring and the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and also Lone Ranger and Rango. He was going to do a BioShock movie. He said it was actually canceled about 8 weeks before the film was going to shoot because Universal was nervous about there being an R-rated big budget movie because a lot of those hadn't worked. So if you're wondering what happened to the BioShock movie, that is it. Taika Waititi, who seems to be amazingly busy and involved in almost everything from early drafts of Moana to Thor Ragnarok, is going to be directing a stop-motion animated film at Sideburns Industries, actually, about Michael Jackson's monkey Bubbles. It sounds like an interesting idea, and that Dan Harmon is slightly involved, and Starburns is involved, and Taika Waititi is involved. I think it sounds like a cool movie. We'll see when that actually comes out because it's stop-motion and stuff, but I think that sounds kind of cool and an interesting way to go, and Bubbles is sort of a fascinating story. It could make for a compelling film, and apparently the script's pretty good. If you know about London After Midnight, it was an infamous silent film starring Lon Chaney, who has long been lost. It's kind of like the crown jewel of silent films that everyone wants to find. And Red Central posted a thing about, there was like news that it might have been found in Spain. And so, okay, here's the thing with London After Midnight. Everybody wants to find this thing. It happens all the time. It'll be a slow movie news week, and someone will be like, oh man, I think we found London After Midnight. And people assume that this time. And I don't blame anyone, because anytime I hear a posting about it, I want to read it and tell people about it and tweet about it. So don't blame anyone for this. I'm not accusing everyone of saying things that aren't true, but I'm just telling you, when you read about London After Midnight maybe found, it's like never worked out for any of us, but we all want it to. We're all like, maybe that we'll finally see it before we all die and America falls apart or something. Apparently some of the sources for this sort of disappeared. There were Facebook posts which now no one can find, and I think it would be really cool if they do find it, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. After Kenny Baker died, who played R2-D2 in pretty much every Star Wars movie until The Last Jedi, I believe Jimmy V apparently will be taking over the iconic role, which I assume he already shot, but apparently we're just finding out now. So he will be taking over as R2-D2 from Kenny Baker, and so he will be a part of the Star Wars universe now instead of Kenny Baker, who unfortunately died last year at the age of 81. 1971. But I think Jimmy V, apparently he's supposed to be a cool guy. He's done a lot of bigger special effects work, especially in the Harry Potter films, so it sounds like kind of a perfect person to do it, and I wish him the best of luck. If you want to read about other villains that they were almost in Lego Batman but weren't, you can click on a link from the director who talks about characters such as Daniel Day-Lewis's character of Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York, because I don't know, and even Kathy Bates from Misery, Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes but played by Jared Harris from that Sherlock Holmes movie that no one talks about. Talking about David Carradine from Kill Bill, Hal from 2001. It's kind of interesting all the other people they considered. I like how they did the more iconic ones. I sort of like those ideas, but they're so weird, but that movie had so many weird references, I'm sure it would have worked. So the BAFTAs happened. There's not much to talk about. La La Land won a bunch of stuff. Who cares? Casey Affleck won Best Actor. If you're like, does that change Denzel's chances? It doesn't, because he wasn't nominated, because the BAFTA doesn't take Denzel Washington seriously and has never nominated him. Also, Kubo and the Two Strings won Best Animated Feature. So if you're rooting for Kubo and the Two Strings, it seems to be the only animated film that's really trying to upset Zootopia. It's gotten a lot of interesting nominations, including like getting a Best Visual Effects nomination at the Oscars, but winning the BAFTA for Best Animated Film is a huge victory for Kubo and the Two Strings and kind of improves its chances at Oscar night. I love Zootopia, but I love Oscar surprises maybe a little more. I think it has a chance at maybe winning something at this point after winning a BAFTA, so who knows. So I'm gonna not just do articles, I'm gonna do two cool videos. One is about Oscars and how their voting works. They do runoff voting, and a Vox video will explain that, so you should check that out if you're interested, and it kind of makes you have less hope in the Oscars. The next thing is an It Follows Halloween mashup all about ambiance. It's kind of a weirder video essay, appropriate one about ambiance, but I think they did an actual good job of cutting that up. And then finally, this is an actual article. The Hollywood Reporter did a thing on the power of yes, who actually has green light authority at movie studios, and it actually goes down every movie studio and shows how they do green lights, how movies get approved. So if you're interested in how that happens and the process of that, particularly in modern Hollywood, Hollywood Reporter has a really cool article about that. If you're ever like, how come this film can't get the green light at this studio, you can maybe read and get a little more insight. So I found it very fascinating. We have 3 trailers at the end here. Not anything big, probably because we're all waiting for that Last Jedi thing and the Super Bowl just happened. First off is The Bad Batch, which is the new movie from Anna Lily Amapour, who also directed A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. It looks cool. Keanu Reeves has a mustache. Jason Momoa is in it. Suki Waterhouse, who was maybe a model in Bradley Cooper's girlfriend. I don't really know much about her. It's not a sexist thing. I just don't. It said introducing, so I'm apparently not supposed to know anything, but it looks like a weird, cool, kind of cultish, strange movie. It looks very stylish, like her first film, and I'm excited for that. The next trailer is Bethany, which you probably haven't heard about, but is a girl who is haunted by her imaginary friend, although that's what it says on the tagline, but the trailer doesn't say that. But it also has Tom Green in it and Shannon Doherty, so that feels very like VOD, but it feels like interesting, like Tom Green's in a horror movie, and also the evil kid from A Christmas Story. It looks kind of low rent how it's shot, but I'm semi-curious about this one. And then finally is The Void, which looks very John Carpenter-y and looks kind of interesting, and I'm curious about that. It was a big Fantastic Fest favorite, but style-wise it looks interesting. A lot of stylish trailers this time, a lot of horror and odd cult things this time. I don't know what that's about. Alright, so that was Movie Crap this time. Obviously my wife's 9 months pregnant, so I do not know if I'm coming back next week or not, but let's just assume I will, maybe. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this episode of Movie Crap. I hope you've liked all the movie news, and I hope that was cool, and I hope you've been enjoying this. And if you'd like to comment on any of the stories, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to.